All right. Welcome, everybody, to our last faculty-led workshop of 2016. I appreciate all of you coming out face-to-face and online, considering the snowy weather and it's finals week, and everyone's about ready to go on holiday break, so it's great to have you here. Today we have Nathaniel and Olusola from the College of Education, the Educational Psychology Department. Nathaniel just finished his PhD, which is why he's very smiley today. Congratulations. And Olusola is one of our faculty in the department. And they're going to talk about a meta-analysis that they did of clickers. You may also know them as quick response systems or student response systems. And they refused to tell me the conclusion when I asked them at the beginning of this, so I'm interested to see kind of where all this went. For those of you in the room, I think you all got a copy of their PowerPoint. They also have a published article over here on the table that you can grab on your way out, so you can take this information back to your places of work. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to them to find out the exciting conclusion to their meta-analysis. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ruth. I really wished I didn't refuse to tell you the conclusions, but it is what it is. All right, clickers. A meta-analysis on the effect of clickers on learning. So we wanted to see, because there's been quite some say about what clickers could do. So we wanted to see what can they really do and where are the boundaries. Oh. But before I proceed, take a look at that question on the board there, on the screen. And unfortunately, I don't have clickers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have everyone do this for me quickly. Okay. So, the main reason for it being hotter in summer than in winter is whatever you think your answer is. Just A, B, C, D, E. Give it to me on that sheet of paper. I'll get them back from you. I'll assume that you're clicking. Thank you. Thank you. Oops. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay. I think I have. Thank you. Did I get yours again? Okay, so let's pull these and see what happens. This is A. Anyway, we'll get to that. No, just the first one. Okay, so I'll take that as the first one. All right. So I have A, B, C, E. No D. Whoa. Okay. Here we have three A's, one B, and why might the answer be A?
Well, the distance does change.
Okay. Are you speaking for us?
Well,
Are you speaking? Are you speaking for A? Are you speaking for
Well,
A?
you said why might it be A?
Okay.
So I'm just trying to rationalize why someone might think it was A.
Okay. Would someone defend why it might be A?
There are points in the rotation where it's closer and farther.
Okay. So when it's closer to the sun, it will be hotter. And I think that sounds logical, right? And when it's far away, it will be colder. Okay. Why might the answer be C? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Any other reason why it might be C? No other reason. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do now. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so I'll split you in half this way. Oh, you two are too far away. How do we do? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll put you that way. So you two are going to that group is going to discuss for me 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. That way, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I know you guys have your answers. So tell yourselves what the answer is and convince yourselves and come up with one answer and we'll discuss the answer. Do you understand me?
Within each group.
Within each group. So your group is coming up with just one answer. So face yourselves, discuss, convince yourselves, and then come up with an answer.
Yeah, there are some parts of the earth away and some that are tilted toward. So it's not about the rotation this way, it's about the tilt this way.
And A and C you can kind of go hand in hand.
The tilt, so you can say, well, this part tilted closer. I mean, sort of how you define those terms. I didn't really think any of us were quite the same.
Well, and also the main reason versus, I mean, they could all be right. I went, can we just say, I went with E, because with the rotation, with the tilt, all that stuff, it's all about getting hit strongest by the sun, and that's where I went. You did E also.
So like if here's the sun.
I said A or C, I don't remember, but because of the whole tilt, like, because that.
So the north south, it's tilted.
Yeah, I thought C.
But if you see
But I mean, none of them are very satisfactory because it's like you
Yeah,
said,
so
when
this
it's
is
summer one place.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not that it's the earth, it's that that portion of the
Right.
earth, that a portion is tilted
but if you
toward
see
versus
how these
tilted
straight
away.
lines, so if you're
Yeah.
down here,
So does that count as being
certain
close?
segment,
What do we know
sunlight is
if we live on the equator?
over here.
Is summer versus winter, is it like consistent throughout the year? I don't know.
Saying is
Pretty
more
consistent.
concentrated.
So I guess I read the question as, for those people living in areas where there is a change, this is the main reason.
Well, I think.
I'm making some assumptions there,
But
so
then
that's where I
it's, but it's not the earth, it's like more of it's that portion of the earth. When it has some,
True, it's true.
The bottom part is gonna get more
So
direct
what are we gonna say?
as the light more spread out over the year.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So let me have your answer here. One person representing this group. You agree on B. Okay. The sun is higher in the sky. That's B. Rationale. Okay, so that's your conclusion. Okay, good. For now. Okay. All right. Yeah. He's speaking for us.
We did not reach consensus.
Well, we sort of reached consensus, but we don't know how our consensus matches those options.
Okay, so what was the consensus?
Well, we think it's because of the tilt, and so it's the problem is that when it says it's not like the Earth, it's like a portion of the Earth. You know, so more direct sunlight hits the portion of the Earth that is in summer because of tilt. So some of the language here is sort of imprecise.
Okay. Okay. We'll see. Yeah.
Oh, we said E
Okay.
because of the tilt of the Earth's axis, so the portion that's tilted towards the sun has an amount of sunlight that's more concentrated at a particular spot, where the bottom or the portion of the Earth that's tilted away has the same amount of sunlight but spread out over a larger area. So there's less concentration of sunlight.
Yeah. If you said E, you're correct. And the reason you're correct is actually where the tilt of the Earth, I think 23 degrees, 23.1 or thereabout, gives you, it affects the angle of incidence. And the angle of incidence of sunlight ray on Earth determines how hot or how cold it would be. While A might sound interesting, that's not the case. C sounds really interesting, but that's not the case. But this is the case. However, I'm not interested in this. But what I'm interested in the fact that I got you guys talking about something. And I got you guys trying to debate yourselves. And then you quite got what the answer is, but the rationale, you were struggling with it. But I got you guys thinking about that. And that's what I'm interested in. And really, that's one of the things we want to talk about here. So I have two other questions, but I'll skip those questions for now because we don't have the time. Yeah, so we have a background, we have research questions, we have a literature search and coding, that's the methodology, we have results and instructional implications of using clickers or audience response system in the classroom. So some say clickers, some say personal response system, some say whatever, but we know it's clicking something. So I'll go in this, we'll go in this other, what we're doing today is just a highlight of our study, of our meta-analysis. I think we have copies here, or you could also get a copy of the article itself. It was published in Computers and Education, I think earlier this year, yeah, earlier this year. Okay. So, okay, so I have to click this way. So, the clicker system comes in this format. You have a receiver, and then you have a receiver system, and then you have a clicking system like, what do you call this? Your remote control or something like that. Just does that kind of remote control system. But one thing that's great about this is it's a stimulus response system. So it's kind of like a behaviorist learning platform. So the stimulus is the teacher gives a question and students are responding. And then at the end of the day, you have this. There's a tally. These are tallied. But I'm still not interested in this. So there are alternatives to the clicker system. Normally, the traditional clicker, you have, I guess we have people who use clickers in their classrooms here. You use clickers?
Well, we use a web-based.
Okay, you use web-based. So the traditional thing is to have students hold something in their hand, like the one we saw in the earlier picture, and then they click to your question. Once they click to your question, you have a tally, like I also showed the other time. However, there are alternatives to using the traditional style of holding a handheld device, because the handheld device could be expensive, and then students could forget them. Because we have web-based solutions like the Socrative Go, Soapbox, and they could do a host of other things. And then we have, some of these can also support students. You have apps that you can actually install on your phone, and then you could have students use their phones instead of having to buy a dedicated device for that purpose. Why do you use clickers in your classroom?
Because it provides a real-time assessment of students' understanding of a concept.
Real-time assessment, okay. Do you use in your classroom?
I work with the employee training now with academic classrooms.
Okay.
But we do use clickers, and there it's to increase participant engagement and also to protect anonymity.
I love that. I was waiting for that. I was waiting for that. Actually, think about a class of 400, and think about my asking you that question, and then someone has the idea that it's warm in summer because the sun is in the sky. We know that's not true because the sun is also in the sky in winter, but it's not hot. So the sense of the fact that I might appear stupid is the only reason many students don't participate in a small and a big class, period. Because I don't want to appear stupid. But with clickers, you can make a vote, and only the instructor knows who voted. Okay, so some use it for attendance, some to ensure participation, interactive engagement. And then one other thing that we found in the literature is that you can actually use it to manage clicker time. How long does concentration take? How long can students concentrate on a lecture? On average, what do you think? 20 minutes? 10 minutes?
10's about right, I think.
Yeah. The research says anything more than 20 minutes, you're already losing concentration. What about, I want to teach 3 concepts, and I'm going for 1 hour. Split those things into 20-minute intervals, then have discussions. And your clicker would facilitate that for you. At least will help you be able to do that. So you have questions, 20 minutes in the class, 20 minutes lecture sections. So already what you're doing is you're breaking a continuous flow. So to allow people to disengage and then re-engage. And then you have interactive engagement. You could use that to monitor understanding and misconceptions, and the fact that you provide evaluation and feedback, like I did after this session just now. So some perspective on why people use clickers is because of the fact that reluctant students would participate. They would, at least they would give their opinion. Students can volunteer their answers because they are volunteering without the threat of being known for their answers. Students can also ask, and then some instructors have claimed that, or the research has shown that when students don't have to feel agitated for giving the answers or feel embarrassed for giving the answers, they are most likely going to be more psychologically invested in these discussions that go on after the questions. And then you have more attentive discussion going on in the classroom. Then, as an instructor, you could gauge what students know and what they don't know. And what that simply does is you wouldn't be running over a section of the topic or of the lecture you're giving because you know students aren't getting this. Or, oh, they've got this, I don't have to flog this anymore. Okay. Good for big classrooms. And the other thing about the clicker effect, why clickers might actually be effective in the classroom is because of the questions themselves, or question and testing effect. So research has shown that when we provide adjunct questions all through, you're going to foster retention. Then taking a test after reading will also enhance memory for the test. And one other thing that you might think, you provide questions in your clicker classrooms.
Yes.
How does that affect the way you prepare for the class as an instructor?
Well, I can tailor my lecture to some extent because if I see that 90% of the students understand a concept, then I can move on. But if only 20% are getting it, then we need to discuss this some more, do some more examples.
Okay,
So
good.
I like that. I can, on the fly, change what's going on in lecture based on clicker responses.
That's implementation, right? What about planning? How might that influence the way you plan the lecture itself? What do you think? To be more flexible? Yeah. Okay. You really have to think about how you prepare your lecture if you know that you want to provide questions. You sure don't want to provide yes or no questions, right? So it makes you more reflective about how to actually structure the whole class. So that's one good thing that questions might offer in the clicker classroom, but anyway, and then the fact that you have peer discussion and the teacher can provide feedback in the classroom. Would you think that discussion in the classroom, would you think that providing students, like some people got the answers wrong, and then they had to speak with their friends, and then they got a new answer. Would you think that is just, how would you describe that? How does that come across to you? I got the answer wrong. I had my friend telling me this is the answer. How does that come across? Does that sound like we're just giving students the answer? Are they just getting the answer from their friends? What do you think? How do you, I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Oh, I understand, yeah.
If students have to discuss and then they come up with an answer, how is that different from if the instructor gives them an answer? I think that's what I'm trying to say. How would that be different?
I think when the instructor gives you the answer, you accept that must be the right answer, and you don't need to understand why. But when they're trying to puzzle it out on their own, you know, if But when we were talking about it, then being able to discuss it and be convinced that her answer is right, which is fine. But, then you're doing a lot more.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Realize that the instructor is assumed an authority. Assumed. Is assumed an authority. So if the instructor gives an answer, at least most students could care less about going any further mentally processing things. That's it. He said it. He knows what he's saying. He's a PhD. That's it. That's all. Most students, you have students who challenge their instructors, but they are not the norm. They are on the very engaged end of the continuum. But the thing is, allowing students to talk in the classroom, allowing them to engage, actually helps them process what's going on in the classroom. At least they are more engaged, they are more cognitively engaged and psychologically engaged in the learning process. In short, you're giving over power to them to take care of you are giving them opportunity to have control of their own learning. So that's what, and research actually shows that discussion, when the instructor provides the answer, is not as effective as when students come up with the answer themselves. But as an instructor, you have the duty to then give some feedback about the questions. So those are some of the things that using clickers in the classroom affords, because you can now give questions. It allows you to give questions if you were not thinking about structuring your class to have question sections before. So we were wondering, how effective are clickers, using clicker technology in the classroom, and then what are they most useful for? Who derives benefits from using them, and how large is the benefit? These were questions that we had in our minds when we're thinking about doing this meta-analysis. So some studies say that clickers are effective, that in fact, clicker classrooms do better than non-clicker classrooms. While some other studies found reverse. In fact, they feel that using clickers in a classroom is a distraction. It harms students. And then the results were inconclusive. So what we decided to do is to pull all those studies together and then try to estimate an average effect of the learning benefits that might be associated with using clickers in the classroom. So we had these research questions. One, we're interested in the effect of using clickers on cognitive and non-cognitive learning outcomes. We're interested in the effect of using questions, the effect of having questions in clicker classrooms, as well as class size. Then we wanted to know for what kind of domain, knowledge domain, would clickers really be effective or would have an advantage?
Well, thank you so much, Nathaniel. You started us off on a very good path. So what we are going to present in the methods and the results section just highlights, and I believe that many of you have the papers and can read, and if you do have questions, please feel free to email us. Time will not allow us to go through details of our findings. So in doing a meta-analysis, we have to very clearly delineate what we call the selection criteria, or some people call them the inclusion or exclusion criteria, which is analogous to sampling in primary empirical studies. I mean, where do I draw my participants from? Considering that this is a secondary kind of analysis, what kind of studies should we pick? Which ones should we not pick? So, and we have to be sure that this is scientific and transparent and reproducible as much as possible. So For our inclusion, we were really very much interested in all types of learners in terms of the population. We were looking for studies that explicitly compared an experimental group that used placas to a control group that did not. We were also looking for studies that reported cognitive measures like retention, transfer, achievement, as well as non-cognitive measures, because again, studies have reported that the effects of clickers could actually be more in terms of non-cognitive, like affective and behavioral measures, like engagement and participation, self-efficacy, attendance, interest, as well as likeness. Again, because this is a meta-analysis, the studies have to be empirical, experimental research with sufficient descriptive statistics provided for us to obtain what we call an effect size, which is the measure of effectiveness of the intervention. We excluded studies that were not publicly available. I mean, in conducting meta-analysis is usually high stake because years after you've published a meta-analysis, some primary authors may contact you and say, why did you exclude my study? So being very, very clear, meticulous, and providing robust inclusion-exclusion criteria is the hallmark of a good meta-analysis. So if a study was not publicly available, there was nothing that we could do, so we excluded those. Studies that were not explicitly stating the interventions were also excluded. Studies looked at other outcomes that were not similar to what we were looking at here. We excluded them. Then in terms of methodologies, opinion pieces, program guides, theoretical studies, case studies, observations were also excluded because we needed empirical studies that had either quasi-experimental or true experimental kind of design. Thank you. So we looked at 5 electronic databases: PsycInfo, Web of Science, Academic Complete, ERIC, and Medline. We used 8 different combinations of keywords with appropriate Boolean expressions. We found over 2,000 hits or studies came up. And what we did then was to read the abstracts of all those over 2,000 studies with our inclusion criteria, we're mapping or aligning those abstracts with our inclusion criteria. So the studies that we felt pretty much met those inclusion criteria were included, and those that did not were excluded. So if we had borderline cases where we were not so sure, just only reading the abstracts, they were retained, because once we exclude at that first phase, then we miss including the study entirely. So 414 studies were included based on reading over 2,000 abstracts. So you will see that we had excluded about 1,800 studies at that point. And then what we then do was to read the full text of all these studies to determine really, do these studies meet all these inclusion criteria? And at that point, only 53 papers met our criteria. So we already excluded about 400 there. Most of the studies that met the full inclusion criteria were articles that were recruited participants in the US or in Canada. Most of the studies also were conducted with college-level students under regular classroom conditions. We coded 31 variables from each study. So when we read each study, we had a coding form that we developed, and we extracted 31 variables from each study. There are cases that some variables were not reported, and we did code those as not reported. 133 comparisons were extracted, 101 for cognitive and 32 for non-cognitive. This was across over 26,000 participants, so really huge, robust findings here. But because, you know, we had 53 articles, but some articles reported multiple experiments. So in that sense, we had to code. There is what we call the principle of statistical independence. In meta-analysis, we had to make sure that one participant was not counted twice. So we had to code at a fine-grained level that produced 111 independent effect sizes that we extracted. Nathaniel and I, with another researcher, we looked at inter-rater reliability. We had 0.2 Cohen's kappa, which is very, very high because Cohen's kappa is very stringent. We used edges G, which is about the same thing as Cohen's D, but edges G helps us to control for biases in sample size. Like if one group, the experimental group, had 100 participants and the control group are 10, that's a pretty huge difference there. So we had to control for that. In terms of results, across all these studies, we found an overall weighted mean effect size of 0.26, which was statistically significant, and that's the chart there. Looking at this more closely, you will see that when we had compared clickers with control conditions that did not have questions, this way a class that had more like was the experimental design studies, a class that had clickers, used clickers. We compared that with another class that did not use clickers. So what we found across 49 studies was a mean effect size of 0.12, which was significant. And we also looked at clickers versus a control condition that had questions. The other one did not have questions. They just, were in a normal class. But we wanted to see, to tease out the questioning effect. Was this as a result of question or not? We still found that even when we had a control condition that used questions, the effect of clickers was still significant at 0.14. Across all outcome constructs like retention, transfer, mixed retention and transfer, engagement and participation, self-efficacy, interest, perception of quality. Across all of these, except that last one, the effect of clickers were pronounced, were significant, as you can see. In terms of domains too, which is really good news because I know that today we have people from the sciences, social sciences, art, and so on and so forth. Across all domains, clickers produced significant findings in health and humanities sciences and engineering, medical, business, management, as well as in the social sciences. We were also interested in looking at classroom size because that's another factor that could potentially moderate the effect of clickers. So when we had a small class of between 5 and 20, which is similar to what you will have in a graduate setting, effect of clickers was huge. Like moderately statistically significant, but at 0.30 across 16 studies, I think that was also robust. When you have a class size of between 21 and 30, that produced even a little bit higher effect size at 0.36. And when you have between 31 and 49 a class, we had close to 0.3. And above 50, which is really what many of us have to deal with in large undergraduate biology, 106, 107 on this campus, or chemistry or physics, the effect is still there, even though it's like at 0.11 is lower, but it's still statistically significant across 54 studies. So I won't bog you down with study design or methodological features, but as you can see, regardless of whether it's random assignment or not, or journal or dissertation, the effect of clickers was still significant. And I think the publication bias is the last one. So and I'll just end here in the interest of time. So one thing that we also do in meta-analysis is to determine to what extent would file drawer effect, and I can explain a little bit about this. Studies have shown over and over the last 30, 40 years that what we find in journal articles are mostly success stories, statistically significant effects that when graduate students conduct studies or researchers conduct studies and they look at the effect of an intervention and it was not significant, the gatekeepers, the journal editors, stand against publishing those. And I've also experienced this. It's a systemic problem that we deal with in academia and in the sciences generally. We do meta-analysis and we speak against this kind of behavior. Why? Because we feel that as long as there's good science behind studies, regardless of whether we find significant effects or not, it's still good that people read about it so that we don't reinvent the wheel. I mean, we apply for many grants from NSF, and sometimes people will say, this doesn't work. We know that, but how do we know? It was not published. It was funded 10 years ago, but yet was not published. So, but the good news about meta-analysis is that we have a statistical way of determining how many unpublished, unfound studies that have been buried in the file drawers are needed to invalidate all these results that we've talked about today. So there is a statistical modeling that could be done in meta-analysis. So we did that, and we did find that over 1,000 studies, and when you even use a more stringent modeling approach or statistical approach, still have close to 700 studies that are needed, unpublished or non-significant studies are needed to invalidate these overall findings. And we are talking about 53 articles here. So our results are not threatened by publication biases, so which is a really good thing. So I'll just hand over to Nathaniel to wrap this up. Now, do we have a few more minutes? What's the time? Okay. Oh, wow. Actually, we can take questions if people
So to help our participants online, if you have questions, maybe put the mic. Anyone?
I haven't used clickers in a classroom, but I've had a chance to observe some folks who use them, I thought, very effectively. And the two classes that really have stayed in my mind as effective use did all kinds of different questions. And so some were opinion questions. There really was no right answer, or there wasn't, it was more to sort of gauge just students' own personal response to something. And then there were some questions that were, testing prior knowledge. So it was just, where's our starting point before we begin this topic? Others were sort of check your understanding where you are now. Didn't count for their grade, but was a chance to just test their knowledge. And some then were, this is now counting for your grade. So because I haven't used clickers, I was kind of astounded by watching the interplay of these different kinds of questions throughout even one session. And so how they would be coded into the system differently so that some don't count at all for the grade, some do, some, they worked in different kinds of ways. As you were doing your study, did you find that there were kinds of questions, the type of questioning that was used matter in terms of the responses that were produced?
Yeah, we didn't code for the kind of questions because the studies didn't code them that way. But the thing is, two categories of questions come to mind quickly: fact questions, conceptual questions. So it depends on your objective as an instructor. So if your objective is you really want engagement, you want discussion, so you don't want to come across giving fact questions. In fact, sometimes, depending on your objective, students might resist clickers in the classroom because it's like you're watching over their shoulder. Are they in the classroom or are they not in the classroom? but it depends on the buy-in the instructor has with students to begin with. So if they feel that this is a way for me just to regurgitate what's happening in the classroom, that might not be fun enough. But if it creates an avenue for discussion, I think the discussion aspect of it, the engagement aspect of it, is what actually provides the promising results. Other than that, it will just be another tool in the classroom. In fact, it could be a distraction in the classroom, except if all you want to do is you use it for attendance purposes. Who clicks in, who doesn't click in, and students can find a way around that, for sure.
I mean, that's an excellent answer, Nathaniel. We do have another meta-analysis, Nathaniel. They projected that earlier on the slides there, and you will see that where we had a meta-analysis of what we call the testing effect. This is a cognitive psychological phenomenon that says that when we provide a space for students to self-test themselves, it creates a retrieval process that is very, very effective for students. So actually, I think the other benefit of Clicker could be in that retrieval process, whereby you make it low stakes. I mean, this is not about grades. This is low stakes. I just want to see where you are. So you also can see where you are, and then, as was said, the instructor can, on the fly, modify instruction. And also the students can know, I missed this question. I need to go and study more on this question. So providing a platform where you can actually repair that knowledge gap, I think it's important. So that study is about being published, and I would be happy to. Kripa is a co-author on that. We'll be happy to talk about that in a few months.
All right. So unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up because we have small technical difficulties at the beginning. We want to make sure everyone gets to their finals and other activities on time. I forgot to say that the faculty-led workshops are a co-production between Academic Outreach and Innovation and the Provost Office. We'll start up again after the new year with Tom Tripp from our Vancouver campus. So look forward to seeing you back either here in Pullman or online. So, and also I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Ruth Gregory. I'm an emerging technology and multimedia specialist at Academic Outreach and Innovation, and I'm happy to work with you on technology in the future, including clickers, although I did not do a meta-analysis. So, thank you all for making your way here in the snow, and have a wonderful holiday break.
Thank you. Oops. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay. I think I have. Thank you. Did I get you again? Okay, so let's pull these and see what happens. This is a. Anyway, we'll get to that. No, just the first one. Okay, so I'll take that as the first one. All right. So I have A, B, C, E. No D. Whoa. Okay, here we have 3A's, 1B, and why might the answer be A?
Well, the distance does change.
Have a published article over here on the table that you can grab on your way out, so you can take this information back to your places of work. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to them to find out the exciting conclusion to their meta-analysis. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ruth. I really wish that I didn't refuse to tell you the conclusions, but it is what it is. All right, clickers. A meta-analysis on the effect of clickers on learning. So we wanted to see, because there's been quite some say about what clickers could do. So we wanted to see what can they really do and where are the boundaries. Oh. But before I proceed, take a look at that.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to our last faculty-led workshop of 2016. I appreciate all of you coming out face-to-face and online, considering the snowy weather and it's finals week, and everyone's about ready to go on holiday break, so it's great to have you here. Today we have Nathaniel and Olusola from the College of Education, the Educational Psychology Department. Nathaniel just finished his PhD, which is why he's very smiley today. Congratulations. And Sola is one of our faculty in the department. And they're going to talk about a meta-analysis that they did of clickers. You may also know them as quick response systems or student response systems. And they refused to tell me the conclusion when I asked them at the beginning of this, so I'm interested to see kind of where all this went. For those of you in the room, I think you all got a copy of their PowerPoint. They also have
a question on the board there, on the screen. And unfortunately, I don't have clickers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have everyone do this for me quickly. So, the main reason for it being hotter in summer than in winter is, whatever you think your answer is, just A, B, C, D, E. Give it to me on that sheet of paper, I'll get them back from you. I'll assume that you're clicking.
Yes, please.
Thank you.